and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Post-Splashdown media teleconference. We just welcomed home NASA's SpaceX Crew-8 crew members who splashed down right on time at 3:29 a.m. Eastern off the coast of Florida. I know it's early here in Houston, so I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. We've got three briefers here in the room, starting with Richard Jones, the Deputy Manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Then we have Bill Spetch, the Operations and Integration Manager for NASA's International Space Station Program. And then we have Bill Gerstenmaier, the Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability for SpaceX. As usual, I am going to hand it off to each of them for opening remarks, and then we will open the telecon up for questions. And with that, I will now pass it over to Richard Jones.
Hey, thank you, Reagan. Appreciate it. First of all, I want to thank everyone on this teleconference for joining in, especially at this very early morning hour. I know these times can be a little bit difficult, but again, thank you. It has been a very, very exciting couple of days working with the ISS team and the SpaceX teams to safely and successfully return the Crew-8 Endeavour capsule along with its crew. Just some unique metrics associated with this mission, just like Reagan was saying, that we touched down at splashdown at 3:29 a.m. Eastern off the coast of Pensacola after undocking from the station on this past Wednesday, October 23rd at 5:05 p.m. Eastern. That was roughly a 34-and-a-half-hour transit from undocking to splashdown. The Endeavour capsule is now our Dragon fleet leader in two means. The first one is that it is a fifth reuse vehicle. This is the fifth mission of that Dragon capsule for CCP missions. The second is that this is the longest duration in space for a U.S. crewed vehicle at 235 days for a given mission, and that translated into 232 days while docked to the International Space Station. So some really great accomplishments for the SpaceX team to enable those amazing accomplishments. Very happy. First of all, I want to also emphasize that we are very happy to have Matt, Mike, Jeanette, and Alexander safely back on Earth. They will be soon reunited with their loved ones, and they spent a little bit extra time waiting for some good weather, and I'll touch on that a little bit. So I think it makes their return even more special from that sense. The weather, as you can imagine, we have been fighting this weather for weeks, and you really can't talk about Crew-8 without talking Crew-9 just because of their close proximity to each other during a handover period. Crew-9, we had to effectively wait for a Hurricane Helene, to go past the peninsula of Florida before we could launch. The Crew-9 mission launched on September 28th and docked the following day on the 29th. And at that point, we were expecting an extended duration handover just because we had to reconfigure the Crew-8 Dragon to allow basically to deconfigure the Crew-8 pallet that had been put in place to serve as an emergency crew return vehicle for Butch and Sonny, who are now officially crew members of that Crew-9 mission. That extra time that we spent during that handover was unfortunate from a weather perspective because a second hurricane, Hurricane Milton, then challenged us, and it traversed the peninsula of Florida as well. In fact, it went right over the Cape area, and we had to wait for that to go into the Atlantic. We were hoping for good weather, but really the thing that happened was a very strong high pressure system built over the southeastern United States and it just whipped up winds in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, and we had to wait for those winds to die down. So roughly we've waited almost 3 weeks for that to transpire before we saw good weather happen, which happened today. The weather, I should comment, was immaculate. The seas were less than a foot of height, and the winds were reported to be 3 knots. We'll get a little bit more refined post-flight assessment of that, but you can just see the ideal conditions for a splashdown event and the ensuing recovery efforts from that. So, but really, the SpaceX team did an amazing job that they always do, getting the capsule back onto the recovery vessel. That only took the approximate 25 minutes they have built into their timeline, and they're performing just like a NASCAR pit crew, getting everything done in a quick and safe manner. There were some items of note during the entry sequence. Really, I ought to emphasize that the vehicle itself, the Endeavour capsule, and the crew did very, very well during the undocking and traversing to its deorbit burn and its subsequent atmospheric reentry. The only things of note really just happened during the parachute deployment sequence. One of the foreign main parachutes exhibited some lagging behaviors in its inflation sequence, roughly 25 to 30 seconds of delay. We've seen that before. That is within the expected our family performance of the main parachutes. Nothing off nominal in that area, just with a 4-parachute system that just naturally occurs where one is kept out of effectively the airstream to allow the ensuing inflation sequence to occur nominally. So that was one item that we observed. The other item in the parachute area is that we did observe some debris strikes on the drogues just from the initial looks at the visible imagery that was collected during entry. We'll take a look at that to ensure we understand that, but the drogues performed nominally. One of the drogues did inflate roughly 1.5 seconds later than its other pair, but that is really within our expected performance. So, I mentioned these things are of note, but I really want to emphasize they're minor in nature, and it's just so that you know that we're paying attention to all these details to ensure human spaceflight is safe and successful. Right now, the crew is doing great. They are going to spend a little bit of time on the recovery vessel going through their medical checks, and they'll soon be on their way back to Houston after all of those are done. I do want to thank the entire teams, the NASA teams, the SpaceX team, for a very successful year. Crew-8 was, the earlier launch and now landing. Splashdown of the Crew-8 mission was in between. We had a CFT Starliner mission, and so our CCP team has really been pushing hard in that sense. So this culminates the end of at least the ascent and entry aspects of those 2 missions. So very, very glad to have that behind us, and I know that me personally, I will be spending some time recovering. I hope the rest of our team has the ability to do the same, but we're going to be celebrating at the same time for accomplishing an amazing year. Of course, spaceflight never stops. The ISS team never stops, and the CCP team never stops either, and we'll use this small amount of rest time to prepare for the next year's challenging mission. But just want to congratulate everyone. Human transportation is incredibly challenging and risky sometimes, but we do everything to minimize that risk in that sense. And again, congratulations to the broader NASA and SpaceX teams for a successful splashdown of the Crew-8 mission. So that's all that I have. I will hand it over to Bill Spetch for his opening statement.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Welcome again to everybody, and thank you for being here. It was really great to see Crew-8 return back to Earth following their 7 months aboard space station. They had a very busy increment and saw the arrival of 8 visiting vehicles as well as the departure of 8 visiting vehicles. After spending that total of 232 days on space station and 235 days total in space, they orbited the Earth 3,760 times, as well as traveling over 99 million statute miles. So long ways to go. And Crew-8 contributed to hundreds of science experiments ranging in topics from flame research, bioprinting, human tissues, immune function in space, drug development, and more. As you know, Crew-9 recently arrived to space station, has been getting settled in and hit the ground running, already contributing to key science investigations on board. Looking ahead a bit to the near term in space station news, we are looking to do a port relocation of the Crew-9 Dragon in early November from the forward port of Harmony to the zenith port of Harmony. That is being done in anticipation of the SpaceX 31 arrival. In that coming weeks, where we'll have SpaceX 31 cargo mission arrive, it'll bring about 6,000 pounds of science, research, investigations, and supplies to the space station. That mission, SpaceX 31, is slated to launch November 4th at 9:29 p.m. Eastern from Florida. So as you can tell, things never really slow down much in the space station world. As always, I want to thank the entire team and all those who have worked tirelessly to support this mission and the changes that have come with it. I also want to thank the partners and those who have supported this flight in any capacity, especially for all of those who have been impacted by the recent hurricanes and storms. Your hard work through all of this does not go unnoticed. Welcome home, Crew-8. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill Gerstenmaier.
All right, I don't believe we have Bill currently. I think we're having some technical difficulties. So what we're going to do is going to go ahead and open up for questioning. As always, please remember to press *1 to join the queue. And before you ask your question, please let us know your name, media affiliation, and who you are directing it to. And then with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Bill Harwood with CBS News. Bill, your line is open.
How about now? Can you hear me now? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Sorry about that. I thought the Gerstenmaier problem is struck. Richard, my question was actually for Gerst, but I'll ask you instead. I'm really curious about how NASA monitors SpaceX in the sense of trying to keep a finger on schedule pressure. You know, yesterday they launched their 100th Falcon 9 of the year. They might hit, going to have several dozen more before the end of the year. I mean, how do you guys on the NASA side be assured that those teams are, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's? Because, it's an unprecedented launch rate, and it just strikes me that, complacency like we saw in Shuttle at some time, could rise up at any point. I'm just wondering how you guys satisfy yourself that that's not happening here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. That's, yes, I think the observation of the increased flight rate is something that we pay attention to all the time. from the perspective that we are working not only our CCP missions, but we're keeping an eye on all of the fleet surveillance that is happening for non-CCP missions. And I think that's important because, just how a vehicle performs, whether it's a launch vehicle, a spacecraft vehicle, we ensure that there's no crossover concerns if any anomalies are happening. The things that I think that ensure that we have a good pulse on that, it comes in multiple ways. The first one, I just want to say the exceptional transparency that SpaceX brings to the table and how they share their fleet performance to us, I think it just makes almost instantaneous information exchange between us, so that we know if there is something that we need to pay attention to, we have it almost immediately. And then we have other standard channels where we have resident officers that are at our the SpaceX manufacturing facilities. We have product assurance actions, basically where we go in and look at very, I'll just say, activities that if we observe and ensure that the right processes are being followed, that we're building in a lot of quality into the system. So we have all of those things going in our favor. And in terms of the rate at which SpaceX is going, like I said, we're there together with them. They're with us and we're with them. And what makes them good is they are nimble and they're very innovative from that perspective. So we together are ensuring that that rate is as fast as possible, but as safe as possible at the exact same time. So together, we're doing that together.
And this is Bill Gerstenmaier. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Okay, I'm glad we have you back. So we're going to go ahead and give you the floor to deliver your opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Okay, first I'll add a little bit to what Richard just said. I think there's a tremendous advantage of us flying as often as we do, and we get a tremendous amount of data on vehicle performance, especially on the Falcon side, and we can provide that data to NASA. And then even when we do our private missions, we let NASA follow along with activities. So, as we do parachute packing, NASA follows along and watches that. On the recent Polaris Dawn mission, we let NASA go ahead and take a look at the vehicle so they could actually look at micrometeoroid debris impacts and inspect the vehicle. So I think that teaming relationship with NASA and our flight rate actually results in a safer and more operational vehicle moving forward. So I think it's often confused that sometimes rate hurts reliability. I actually believe a reasonable rate actually improves reliability. And with that, I'll give you a couple quick opening remarks. I think it's a great day here at SpaceX. Launching crews is exciting and demanding, but seeing the crews come home safely after their journey to ISS is especially sweet. When we see crews come home safely, we can take a deep breath and know that we've really done our job, and it's really a special day. And as Richard said, this spacecraft endeavor has really earned its name. It's flown Demo 2, Crew 2, AX-1, Crew 6, and now Crew-8. And it's spent almost 702 days in orbit, so pretty amazing vehicle endeavor. It's also amazing to think that SpaceX has now launched 44 times to ISS. 27 of those times have been on reused or reflown Dragons, which is also pretty amazing. It's a real pleasure for me to be part of the SpaceX and NASA teams. With each flight and every day in space, we are developing teams, hardware, and processes that will someday make us multiplanetary. And the ability to fly these flights and do these things and work as a team is absolutely amazing. So I'll turn it back over and be ready to answer any other questions. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. We'll go back over to the question. We'll go to Stephen Young with Spaceflight Now.
Thank you. If you would indulge me, I have a question for all three of you. For Richard Jones, I wonder if you could give us an update on Starliner and its certification, where you stand on that. And then for Bill Spetch, EVAs have been on hold for a while, U.S. EVAs. Do you have any update on that and when we might see a resumption of U.S. EVAs. And then for Bill Gerstenmaier, we've already heard how Endeavour is the fleet leader with 5 flights and 235 days on this particular mission alone. What are you seeing as far as wear and tear on the Dragon capsules? You mentioned micrometeorite strikes on the Polaris Dawn capsule. Just give us a sense of how the vehicle is holding up on these long duration flights, and also how many flights you think Dragon capsules can be used for.
Okay, Stephen, I'll start off to update you on Starliner. First of all, our teams are just wrapping up the first phase of, I'll just call them system level reviews, part of the standard post-flight analysis, where you look at all of the data. What we did with this first phase was effectively characterize what was seen in the data. So identifying both I'll just say lower level observations to more significant ones, which are of higher concern. Clearly, the ones that everyone are familiar with are the RCS issues, the thruster issues with the Teflon poppet seals that were swelling, and of course the helium leaks. Those were the two bigger items. So we're wrapping that first initial phase up right now, and we're transitioning into, I'll just say, our analysis and problem rectification phase. And so we're just starting that, just trying to understand how to correct and rectify the issues that are on the table. And so we're starting that process right now. But the schedules associated with how long and what will be required in that area is in front of us, and we'll be working hard on that to know the condition of the Starliner, so that we could put all of that knowledge into the upcoming Starliner 1 mission.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Stephen Clark with Ars Technica.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Stephen Clark, Ars Technica, and thanks for doing this. I think I have a couple of questions for Gerst, maybe Richard Jones, if he has any thoughts, please chime in. First of all, can you provide any updates on when you expect to redeploy recovery assets out to the West Coast for future Dragon missions? When do you expect the first Dragon or the next Dragon? I know you used to do this off of California for Dragon 1. When do you expect the next Dragon to splash down in the Pacific? And are you moving all assets to the West Coast, or are you going to keep some capability in Florida to be able to have that option still as well? And secondly, this was a 235-day mission, obviously a new endurance record for Dragon. It extend the certification from 210 days. Do you anticipate extending the certification further for longer duration Dragons eventually, or do you think this was sort of an aberration, that this was an unusual circumstance where you had to keep Dragon up there for this long? Thanks.
Yeah, so to answer your questions, a couple things. First of all, we're looking to go into the West Coast with Dragon reentries sometime next year in early 2025, and that's pretty much on track. When we make that move, the intent will be to stay on the West Coast for recovery and move activities there. And again, what that does is that allows certainty in the trunk disposal, and that's where we're heading to for 2025. In terms of the vehicles, they're performing extremely well. They have very good lifetime. We've refurbish a lot of things on the outside. A lot of that TPS gets refurbished. We change out some thrusters. We refly some thrusters on cargo flights. We actually reuse some parachutes. So I think, again, we're showing that reuse works out extremely well. In terms of capability on orbit, this vehicle did extremely well with its 235 days in space, and I think we could easily extend that quite a bit more. We don't see a lifetime issue with that, but we'll go ahead and take a look at this data. We'll look at the vehicle in detail now that we've got it back. We'll go look at detailed systems as we do refurbishment, and we'll learn from this vehicle and make sure that we've got a good understanding of what's going on. But at this point, I don't see a life limit of where we are in terms of time on orbit. And we also have a new Dragon that's getting ready to undergoing testing here in Hawthorne, in fact, today, and it'll be shipped to the Cape. So we'll be introducing a new Dragon into the fleet to continue to support NASA and the space station.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Jeff Faust with Space News.
Good morning. Question for either NASA or SpaceX representatives. Any sort of lessons learned that you take from this extended wait from returning the Crew-8 Crew Dragon? Anything you would do differently if you encountered a similar scenario with a future Crew Dragon mission? And then also a question specifically for Bill Spetch. I know you've got a lot of reserves of supplies on the station, but do you plan, because the extended time that you had a larger crew on the station, do you plan to bring up some additional supplies on SpaceX 31 or a future mission to top up those reserves? Thanks.
I guess I'll take this one. The extended state or stay on the station, it was clearly based off of making sure that we had safe weather. So there's no deltas or lessons learned from that perspective. You just have to wait for that good weather to show up. I think the only other observation is that when you get into this transition period in this weather season, after our plan, I'll just say our centers where we normally perform handovers, I think that's the lesson learned, and it's not necessarily a lesson learned. It's an expectation that in this time frame, we can expect some extended stays from that perspective. So it's not. It's more of a hey, if you delay into these months, this is something that we might have to wait through. But nothing of concern and nothing different that we would do in that sense.
Yeah, and then Jeff, from the supply standpoint, yeah, we do maintain good reserves, and we've been keeping a close eye on. We've had extra crew on board station for a while now, so we actually added supplies to the NG-21 mission when it came up. And prior to this delay, we had added additional supplies to SpaceX 31. And really, we're in good shape there. We have a couple of specific things that the crew requested that they were getting low on that we sent up, that we're going to send up on SpaceX 31, but we didn't have to displace anything for that. So we really have ourselves in pretty good shape to carry us through to our next missions next year.
And I would say as the Dragon stays on orbit, we typically power it up periodically and take a look at systems and make sure they're all healthy and look like they're in good shape. But as Richard said, we need to be prepared for unexpected weather conditions and extensions, and we continually to monitor things. And we'll learn a lot from this vehicle and this flight, and we'll look at the detailed systems. And I think we'll be able to have a much better understanding of what, if there are any life-living things in terms of the capsule. But again, I think we didn't learn anything special, except I think the systems all performed the way we expected them to work. And today's entry and all the systems worked extremely well during entry.
All right, we'll go to Richard Turbeau with the Orlando Sentinel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. This question is for Gerst. Thanks for taking the call. What's the current lifespan for Crew Dragons, and how many missions would you try to push that to before retirement? And then secondly, is FRAM 2 still on track to launch before the end of the year? And if so, would that be landing off the coast of Florida? And that's it. Thank you.
Again, FRAM 2 will be in early spring next year. So that's what our current plan is. So it's moved a little bit out. And then in terms of like vehicle life, I think this 235 is where we are. We'll look at the data and then see if we want to officially work with NASA to officially extend the lifetime and duration of the capsule. In terms of capsule reflights, this was the fifth flight of Endeavour, and we'll continue to look at that. We're looking to certify beyond the fifth flight further, and we'll work with NASA on that official certification process with them. And as they'll go through all the detailed systems and make sure that we've got the right life and whatever. But I think we'll definitely be extending the crew life beyond the 5 flights out towards 10 or so, or a little bit even more. But we'll work with NASA in the future.
All right, and we'll move on to our last question on our phone bridge with Stephen Young for Spaceflight Now.
Yeah, I just wanted to put my question again to Bill Spetch about the U.S. EVAs. What's the status on that? Any investigation into the suit problems you had, and when we might see a resumption of U.S. EVAs?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that earlier. Hey, we are planning our next set of EVAs early next year, and it'll be shortly after the new year. We're really looking at it. In terms of the cause of what we saw on the last one with Mike and Tracy, that was a service and cooling umbilical that was the source of that water, and a specific seal on it. We replaced that umbilical on board and tested it back out with the suits pressurized and unpressurized, and we have a good umbilical now, and we're ready to go. Now it's just a matter of when is the right timing relative to all of the vehicle traffic, the research activities that we're doing on board ISS.
All right. Thank you to Stephen, and thank you to everyone who joined this Post-Splashdown teleconference. Again, thank you to all the briefers here this morning, and thank you for everyone for dialing in and watching our coverage of Crew-8's safe return. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for your participation.